What happens when royal privilege collides with reality and a prince thinks he can say whatever he wants without consequences? In just 33 seconds, one comment would destroy everything and turn a friendly conversation into an absolute nightmare that no one saw coming. But before we get into this wild mess, make sure you hit that subscribe button right now because we're pulling back the curtain on royalty's dark side, exposing entitled celebrities and their shocking behavior the cameras never showed you. We've got the raw footage they don't want you to see, and you won't want to miss a single reveal. Drop a comment below with your thoughts on this outrageous behavior because this is going to blow your mind. So picture this: Trevor Noah, one of the most respected podcast hosts in the world, sitting across from Prince Harry in what was supposed to be a simple, friendly interview. The studio lights are warm, the cameras are rolling, and everyone thinks this is going to be just another casual chat. But what nobody knew was that this conversation was about to go completely off the rails in the worst way possible. Trevor starts things off nice and easy, just trying to make his guests feel comfortable. He's smiling, he's welcoming, doing what he does best. He says to Harry, "Thank you so much for joining us today. I know you've got a lot going on, so I really appreciate you taking the time to sit down with us." And Harry just kind of nods. Not really warm, not really friendly, just sitting there like he's doing Trevor this massive favor by even showing up. Already you can feel something's a little off. The energy isn't quite right. But Trevor's a professional, so he pushes forward. Trevor asks his first real question. "So, I want to talk about your new projects and what you've been working on. Can you tell us what's been keeping you busy lately?" Simple question, right? Nice and easy. But Harry doesn't really answer it. Instead, he starts talking about how hard his life is, how nobody understands what it's like to be him, how the media is always so cruel and unfair. And Trevor's listening, nodding along, trying to be supportive. But then Harry says something that makes Trevor pause. He says, "You know, Trevor, you wouldn't understand what it's like. You've had it easy compared to what I've been through." The room goes quiet for a second. The producers behind the cameras exchange glances. Did he just say that? To Trevor Noah, the man who grew up during apartheid in South Africa? The man who wrote an entire book about his struggles? Trevor keeps his cool though. He's not going to take the bait. He just laughs it off a little and says, "Well, I think we've all had our challenges in different ways. But let's talk about your work. What message are you trying to share with people?" Harry doesn't like that response. You can see it on his face. He shifts in his seat and his whole tone changes. He says, "That's exactly what I'm talking about. People always try to minimize what I've gone through. You're doing it right now." Trevor's eyebrows go up a little. He's confused because he was literally just trying to move the conversation forward. He says, very calmly, "I'm not trying to minimize anything. I'm just trying to understand your perspective and what you want to talk about." But Harry's already getting worked up. He starts going on about how everyone's always against him, how the whole world is out to get him, how he can't trust anyone. And Trevor's still trying to be patient, still trying to keep things on track. He says, "I hear you. That sounds really difficult. But maybe we can focus on some of the positive work you're doing?" Harry just waves his hand like he's brushing Trevor off, like Trevor's questions don't even matter. And then he says something that really crosses a line. He looks right at Trevor and says, "Maybe if you asked better questions, we'd have a better conversation." The entire crew freezes. You could hear a pin drop in that studio because that's just disrespectful. Trevor has interviewed presidents, celebrities, world leaders, and he's known for asking thoughtful, intelligent questions. And here's this guest, sitting in Trevor's studio, insulting him to his face. Trevor takes a breath. You can see him collecting himself. He's a professional, and he's not going to lose his temper, but he's also not going to let that slide. He says, very carefully, "I think my questions have been pretty fair, but if there's something specific you want to discuss, I'm all ears." Harry leans back in his chair with this look on his face like he's annoyed that Trevor even responded. He says, "Fair? You call this fair? You're just like all the rest of them, trying to trap me, trying to make me look bad." Trevor shakes his head. "I'm not trying to trap anyone. This is a conversation. That's all it is." But Harry's not having it. He's getting more and more agitated, and his voice is getting louder. He says, "You know what your problem is? You think you're so smart, sitting here with your little talk show, acting like you understand everything, but you don't know anything about my life." Now Trevor's patience is really being tested, but he stays calm. He says, "You're right. I don't know everything about your life. That's why I'm asking you questions. That's how conversations work." Harry stands up at this point, actually gets up out of his chair. Everyone's looking around, confused, wondering what's happening. And Harry points at Trevor and says, This is why I don't do these things. Everyone's always trying to tear me down." Trevor stands up too, not in an aggressive way, but just because the situation is getting weird. He says, "Nobody's trying to tear you down. I invited you here to have a conversation. That's it." But Harry's already taking off his microphone. He's pulling the little clip off his shirt, and he's shaking his head. He says, "I don't have to sit here and listen to this. Do you know who I am?" And that's the moment. That's the exact moment where everyone knew this was going to end badly. Because when someone says, "Do you know who I am?" they've already lost the argument. They've already shown that they think they're better than everyone else. Trevor just stands there, calm as anything. He doesn't yell. He doesn't get upset. He just says, very simply, "I know exactly who you are. And I think it's probably best if we end things here." Harry throws the microphone down on the chair, actually throws it, and he says, "You're making a huge mistake. You have no idea what you're doing." Trevor doesn't flinch. He just says, "I think I know exactly what I'm doing. Thank you for coming." And Harry storms off, just walks right off the set, pushing past crew members, not looking at anyone. The whole studio is in shock. Nobody can believe what just happened. One of Trevor's producers comes over and asks if he's okay, and Trevor just nods. He looks at the cameras and says, "Well, that's not how I expected today to go." The thing is, Trevor handled it perfectly. He never raised his voice. He never insulted Harry back. He just stood his ground and refused to be treated badly in his own studio. And that's what makes this whole situation so crazy. Because Harry came onto Trevor's show, into Trevor's space, and acted like he owned the place. Like Trevor should be grateful just to be in his presence. Let's rewind a little bit and talk about how things really started going wrong. Because it wasn't just one moment. It was a buildup of little things that showed Harry's true colors. When Harry first walked into the studio, he didn't shake anyone's hand, didn't greet the crew, didn't say hello to the producers who had been working for hours to set everything up. He just walked straight to his chair and sat down. Trevor noticed it. Everyone noticed it. But they all tried to give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he was nervous. Maybe he was having a bad day. But then the camera started rolling, and it became clear that this wasn't nerves. This was attitude. Pure entitlement. Trevor asked him about his charity work, about the causes he cares about, and instead of talking about helping people or making a difference, Harry just complained about the media, about his family, about how hard everything is for him. Trevor tried so many different angles to get a real conversation going. He asked about Harry's kids. Harry gave one-word answers. He asked about Harry's wife. Harry said, "Next question." He asked about Harry's favorite memories from his childhood. Harry said, "I'd rather not talk about that." At one point, Trevor even tried to bond with him over their shared experiences with the media. He said, "I know what it's like to have people write things about you that aren't true. It's frustrating." And Harry just looked at him and said, "It's not the same thing at all." Every single attempt Trevor made to connect, to find common ground, to have an actual conversation, Harry shut down. And not just shut down, he was rude about it, dismissive. Like Trevor's attempts weren't even worth acknowledging properly. There was this moment about halfway through, before everything completely fell apart, where Trevor tried a different approach. He said, "Look, I can tell you're not comfortable. Is there something I can do to make this easier for you? Is there a topic you'd rather discuss?" And Harry just stared at him for a long moment and said, "Maybe you should have thought about that before inviting me here." Like it was Trevor's fault that Harry couldn't have a normal conversation. The crew members who were there said later that they'd never seen anything like it. They'd seen difficult guests before. They'd seen people who were shy or nervous or unprepared. But they'd never seen someone come on a show and actively try to make the host look bad. That's what Harry was doing. Every answer was designed to make Trevor seem like he was, asking stupid questions. Every response was meant to make Trevor look like he didn't know what he was doing. When Trevor asked about Harry's future plans, Harry said, "Why do you care?" When Trevor asked about his favorite books, Harry said, "That's personal." When Trevor asked what kind of music he's been listening to lately, Harry said, "I don't see how that's relevant." Nothing was good enough. No question was right. No topic was acceptable. Harry sat there acting like he was being interrogated instead of being a guest on a friendly podcast. And the whole time, Trevor kept trying, kept smiling, kept attempting to salvage the conversation. But you can only try so hard before you realize the other person doesn't want to be there. And that's what made Harry's explosion even worse. Because Trevor had given him every opportunity to just have a nice chat, to talk about whatever he wanted, to share his story in his own words. And Harry threw it all back in his face. When Harry said that thing about Trevor not asking good enough questions, you could see something shift in Trevor's expression. Not anger exactly, more like disappointment. Because Trevor takes his work seriously. He prepares for every interview. He researches his guests. He thinks about what questions will be interesting and meaningful. And to have someone dismiss all that effort, to insult his intelligence and his skill like that, it hurt. You could see it hurt. But Trevor didn't let that hurt turn into anger. He didn't let it make him unprofessional. He just took a breath and tried one more time to keep things civil. That's what makes him the good guy in all this. He could have kicked Harry out right then and there. He could have told him off, but he didn't. He tried to keep going. It was Harry who couldn't handle it. Harry who let his ego take over. Harry who decided that being treated like a normal person was somehow beneath him. He came onto that podcast expecting to be worshipped, expecting Trevor to ask him softball questions and tell him how amazing he is. And when that didn't happen, when Trevor tried to have a real conversation instead, Harry couldn't deal with it. The moment when Harry stood up and pointed at Trevor, that was when everyone knew it was over. Because that's aggressive. That's threatening. You don't stand up and point at someone during a conversation unless you're trying to intimidate them. And Trevor doesn't intimidate easily. He's been through too much in his life to be scared of an entitled prince having a tantrum. Trevor's response was perfect. Calm, clear, direct. Nobody's trying to tear you down. Such a simple statement, but it said everything. It showed that Trevor wasn't going to engage with the drama, wasn't going to play Harry's game. He was just stating facts. And that, "Do you know who I am?" moment, that's going to follow Harry forever. Because that's the thing you say when you've got nothing else. When your argument doesn't make sense, when you're clearly in the wrong, you fall back on your title, your status, your position. You try to remind people that you're supposedly important. But here's the thing about truly important people, truly respected people. They never have to ask if you know who they are. You already know. And if they're actually good people, they don't care whether you know or not. Trevor knows exactly who he is. He doesn't need to remind anyone. He's earned respect through his work, through his talent, through treating people with kindness and dignity. Harry tried to use his birth, his family name, his title as a weapon, and it didn't work. Because Trevor doesn't care about titles. He cares about how people treat each other. When Harry threw that microphone down, the sound tech actually gasped out loud. Because that's equipment. That's expensive. That's someone's job to take care of that stuff. And Harry just threw it like it was garbage. Like nothing mattered except his feelings in that moment. No respect for Trevor's show, for Trevor's crew, for anyone working there that day. The way Harry pushed past the crew members on his way out, didn't apologize, didn't acknowledge them, just shoved through like they were obstacles in his way. These are people who got up early that morning to set up the studio. People who adjusted the lights and checked the sound and made sure everything was perfect for the interview. And Harry treated them like they were invisible. Meanwhile, Trevor stood there watching him leave, and then turned to those same crew members and asked if everyone was okay. Made sure nobody got hurt when Harry pushed past. Apologized to them for the disruption, even though none of it was his fault. That's the difference right there. That's what separates a good person from someone who only cares about themselves. After Harry left, Trevor sat back down in his chair. The cameras were still rolling, catching everything. And Trevor just looked at the camera and said, "Well, that's not how I expected today to go." And then he smiled. Not a mean smile, not a mocking smile. Just a tired, genuine smile that said, "What can you do?" He didn't trash talk Harry, didn't complain, didn't say anything negative. He just acknowledged that things went sideways and moved on. The producers asked if he wanted to take a break, if he needed anything, and Trevor said no. He said he was fine. He said these things happen sometimes, because that's who Trevor is. He doesn't let one bad experience ruin his day. He doesn't let one rude person make him bitter. Some of the crew members tried to apologize to Trevor, like it was somehow their fault that Harry acted that way. And Trevor told them, "You didn't do anything wrong. Nobody here did anything wrong. Sometimes people are just going through something and they take it out on whoever's nearby." He made excuses for Harry even after Harry had treated him terribly. That's grace. That's class. The thing that really gets me about this whole situation is that it didn't have to happen. If Harry had just come in with a good attitude, if he'd been willing to have a real conversation, this could have been great. Trevor's one of the best interviewers in the business. He knows how to make people comfortable. He knows how to bring out interesting stories. He could have made Harry look good, could have given him a platform to share whatever message he wanted to share. But Harry didn't want a conversation. He wanted an audience. He wanted people to sit there and nod along and agree with everything he said without question. And when Trevor tried to actually engage with him, tried to dig deeper, tried to have a meaningful discussion, Harry took it as an attack. That line about, "You've had it easy compared to what I've been through," that's going to stick with people. Because Trevor hasn't had it easy. Not even close. He's talked openly about growing up in South Africa during apartheid, about being mixed race in a country where that was literally illegal, about his mother being arrested just for being with his father, about poverty, about violence, about systemic oppression. And Harry, who grew up in a palace, who had every advantage in the world, had the audacity to tell Trevor that Trevor had it easy. That's not just rude, that's ignorant. That shows a complete lack of awareness about other people's lives and struggles. And Trevor could have destroyed Harry for that comment, could have listed everything he's been through, could have put Harry in his place. But he didn't. He just moved on. Because Trevor's not trying to win arguments. He's trying to have conversations. When Harry said, "You're just like all the rest of them," what he really meant was, "You're not treating me like I'm special." Because everyone else in Harry's life probably does treat him like he's special, tells him what he wants to hear, agrees with everything he says. And Trevor was treating him like a regular person, like someone who needs to answer questions and participate in a conversation instead of just monologuing about how hard his life is. The entitlement just drips from every word Harry said. Maybe if you ask better questions. You think you're so smart. Do you know who I am? You're making a huge mistake. Every single line is about him, about his importance, about how everyone should be grateful for his presence. There's no humility there, no self-awareness, just this overwhelming sense that the world owes him something. And the saddest part is that Harry probably left that studio thinking he was in the right, thinking Trevor was the problem, thinking everyone else would side with him because of his title, because of his family, because of who he is. But that's not how the real world works. In the real world, you don't get respect just because of your last name. You earn it through how you treat people. Trevor earned respect that day by staying calm, by remaining professional, by refusing to sink to Harry's level. He showed everyone watching exactly what kind of person he is. Strong, dignified, unshakable. He didn't need to yell or throw things or storm off to make his point. He just stood there, solid as a rock, and let Harry's behavior speak for itself. This whole disaster of an interview is a perfect example of what happens when someone's been insulated from reality for too long. When you're surrounded by yes men and people who treat you like you're better than everyone else, you start to believe it. You start to think that normal rules don't apply to you, that you can say whatever you want and do whatever you want and there won't be consequences. But Trevor Noah's podcast isn't a royal palace. It's a place where real conversations happen, where people are expected to show up, be present, and engage honestly. And Harry couldn't do that. He came in with his walls up, his defenses ready, his attitude fully activated. He was looking for a fight from the start, and when Trevor wouldn't give him one, he created one himself. The beautiful thing about how Trevor handled this is that he never took the bait. Harry kept trying to provoke him, kept trying to get a reaction, and Trevor just wouldn't give him the satisfaction. He stayed steady. Stayed professional, stayed kind, even when Harry was being cruel. That takes strength, real strength, not the fake kind that comes from titles or money or status. The real kind that comes from knowing who you are and not needing to prove it to anyone. This interview was supposed to be about 30 minutes long. It barely made it to 15 before everything fell apart. 15 minutes was all it took for Harry to show his true colors. 15 minutes of him being unable to handle being treated like everyone else. 15 minutes of escalating rudeness until it exploded into that final confrontation. And through all of it, Trevor tried. That's what people need to understand. Trevor didn't give up on the conversation. He didn't write Harry off after the first rude comment. He kept trying to find a way to make it work, kept adjusting his approach, kept offering olive branches. He did everything a good host should do, and it still wasn't enough because Harry didn't want it to work. When someone comes into a situation determined to be unhappy, determined to be offended, determined to feel attacked, there's nothing you can do. You can be as kind and patient and understanding as humanly possible, and they'll still find a way to twist it into something negative. That's what Harry did. He turned every attempt at connection into an insult, every question into an attack, every moment into evidence that the world was against him. The crew member said afterward that the tension in the room was unbearable by the end. Everyone was uncomfortable. Everyone wanted it to be over. But they all stayed professional because that's their job. They kept the cameras rolling. They kept the lights on. They did their work even while this disaster was unfolding in front of them. And Harry didn't even notice them, didn't care about their discomfort, only cared about his own feelings. That's the difference between someone who's really been through hard times and someone who just thinks they have. People who've actually struggled know how to recognize other people's humanity. They know how to treat service workers and crew members and everyone around them with respect because they understand what it's like to be overlooked and undervalued. Harry clearly doesn't understand that. He's so wrapped up in his own narrative of victimhood that he can't see anyone else's reality. Trevor sees it though. Trevor's whole career is built on seeing people, really seeing them, understanding where they come from, finding common ground, building bridges, and he tried to do that with Harry. He really tried. But you can't build a bridge to someone who's determined to burn it down. The moment that really shows Trevor's character is when he thanked Harry for coming, even as Harry was storming off, even after everything that had just happened. Even after being insulted and disrespected in his own studio, Trevor still had the grace to say thank you, because that's who he is. He doesn't let other people's bad behavior turn him into someone he's not. Harry wanted to leave that studio feeling righteous, feeling like he'd stood up for himself, feeling like he'd put Trevor in his place. But all he really did was show everyone that he can't handle being treated like a normal person, that he needs special treatment and constant validation. That without his title and his status, he's just someone who doesn't know how to have a respectful conversation. The whole thing lasted 33 seconds from that fatal comment about Trevor not asking good questions to Harry ripping off his microphone. 33 seconds to go from tense to explosive. 33 seconds for Harry to destroy any goodwill anyone might have had toward him. 33 seconds that showed the world exactly who he really is when he doesn't get his way. And Trevor just stood there and took it with dignity. Didn't fight back. Didn't get defensive. Didn't try to have the last word. He just let Harry leave and then turned to make sure his crew was okay. Because that's what real leaders do. They protect their people. They stay calm in chaos. They handle difficult situations with grace. This whole mess could have been avoided so easily. All Harry had to do was show up ready to have an honest conversation, ready to be vulnerable, ready to connect with another human being who was genuinely interested in hearing what he had to say. But he couldn't do it. His ego wouldn't let him. His sense of entitlement wouldn't let him. His need to be treated as special wouldn't let him. So instead, we got this disaster, this explosion, this perfect example of what happens when privilege meets reality and can't handle it. Harry thought he could walk into Trevor's studio and control everything, control the questions, control the narrative, control how he was treated. But Trevor's not someone who can be controlled. He's his own person with his own standards and his own way of doing things. And those standards include treating everyone fairly and expecting basic respect in return. Harry couldn't give that respect, or wouldn't. Either way, the result was the same. An interview that went from awkward to awful to absolutely catastrophic in record time. A conversation that never really was a conversation. A meeting between two people where only one of them was actually trying to meet in the middle. The fact that Trevor remained so calm throughout the whole thing is almost unbelievable. Most people would have snapped back, would have defended themselves more forcefully, would have told Harry exactly where he could go with his attitude. But Trevor understands that sometimes the best response is no response. That sometimes you win by refusing to play the game. That dignity and composure are more powerful than any comeback could ever be. So there you have it, the complete and total breakdown of what was supposed to be a simple podcast interview. The story of how one person's entitlement and bad attitude turned a friendly conversation into an absolute nightmare. And the story of how Trevor Noah handled it all with the kind of grace and class that most people could only dream of having. This is what real character looks like. Not throwing tantrums when things don't go your way, not insulting people who are trying to help you, not storming off because you can't handle being treated like everyone else. Real character is staying calm under pressure, being kind even when others aren't, taking the high road even when it would be so easy to take the low one. Trevor Noah showed us all what that looks like, and Prince Harry showed us what the opposite looks like. One of them walked out of that studio with their reputation enhanced. The other one walked out having damaged theirs, possibly beyond repair. And the whole thing was captured on camera for the world to see. That's what happens when entitlement meets reality. Reality wins every single time.